Somehow the failures and rejection never seemed to wear them down, and in fact, failure seemed to encourage them. I watched the late night meetings that were held in our home, and I would see the women start to fade and become mentally drained as the evening wore on. Then one of them would bring up a much discussed topic such as entrenched political interests or government regulation that they all would quickly get a second wind, offering their opinions about how things should be. They didn't always agree on politics, but they agreed that their voices should be heard. The thought of being so close to the voting booth for federal elections carried them through their fatigue. These women had become a part of a tightly woven fabric of suffragette clubs that covered the state, and it was a true team effort. No one wanted to let anyone else down. One morning last week, all of their efforts came to fruition. I was just finishing up my chores when my mother burst through the front door with news that the 19th Amendment had been ratified by Congress. Never usually at a loss for words, my mother told me the news in stilted fragments and then stood there, speechless. I stared at her for a moment, incredulous. Betty's house. We'll celebrate. As we hastily ran down the steps of our building, I began to hear the wave of celebration already taking over the city. Anyone who had heard the news break over the radio moments before was outside, spreading the word in the streets. At Betty's house, the suffragettes toasted their hard-fought victory. I watched in amazement as they quickly tempered their joy with the new, self-imposed responsibilities they would bear now that women had the vote. That very afternoon, they set about organizing a club for women voters that would disseminate information about politics and the people campaigning in federal elections. Everything had changed that day. I knew that in just 3 years, I would be allowed to enter a voting booth, and my opinion about who would lead the country would be counted. The end.